Black culture has long influenced global trends. So
Yes.
you talking about dance, music, food, across the board,
Fashion, all of
fashion.
it.
We influence all of it, but the economic participation hasn't always been there. That has lagged, and I
Mhm.
wonder what your thoughts are on how Black investors and entrepreneurs can better capitalize on the culture that we help create.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good question, and that is all factual, and we've seen it, from even back in the day, in the early days of music and different genres and hip hop, like that has persisted. That the early contributors, quite frankly, were not kind of paid and compensated equal to their input into the success of that thing. And so for us, we specifically invest in tech. So my lens is around wealth generation in technology, especially for Black people. And I think there's three ways to do that in tech. Three ways to do that in tech. The first is investing early into the best new companies. And so when you think about companies that have grown and IPO'd, that we all talk about, the Facebooks and the
Yeah.
Airbnbs and the Instacarts of the world, a lot of people who made money when those companies went public were investors 10 years before that, right? So they were in the seed and the Series A and the Series B. So one of the core things that I do in my role is help Black investors get on those early cap tables. How do you invest in Facebook in 2005? So that's the first thing. You have to be an investor early. The second thing is early employeehood. It's kind of in a similar fashion. The folks who go and work at the company when it's 10 or
Yeah.
50 or 100 people have the opportunity to earn early employee equity, and that grows over time and turns into something meaningful should that company have a really great liquidity event. So working in tech early, and sometimes that can be a big risk. You never know how it will turn out, but the reward of something like that, especially if it's an area you're passionate about, can pay off immensely. You having that impact early with that company. And then the final thing is actually putting capital into the hands of founders.
Hmm.
We love seeing them be able to build and grow their businesses. And that's one of the true ways to build wealth from your contributions in tech is starting a company.
And so I want to touch on Megan first. Of course, there's a lot of ways I'm going to
Ooh,
go off of what you just said, but I want
okay.
to make sure people understand who Megan is first. And so, you grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, correct?
Yes, sir.
Deep history that city
Hmm.
does in civil rights, deep
Yep.
history. How did growing up in that environment influence who you are today?
That is a big question because, but I guess the answer is simple because it's like everything. The things that people read about in books are the things that I saw growing up. It was in the water I drank growing up as a kid, right? Folks read about the bus boycott and Rosa Parks. I would be walking downtown and there's a sign that says, "This is where Rosa Parks did
Yeah,
not get off the bus," right?
yeah,
This
yeah.
is where this happened. This is where this happened. So it was really in front of my face on a constant basis. And so when I left to go off to college to Clark Atlanta, I very much carried those things with me. Um, Also important kind of part of growing up in Alabama is that both of my parents went to HBCUs. So this culture around Black evolution and Black empowerment and Black independence has kind of been a part of my story for a very long time. And I still very much hang on to that now and use it in the way that I work. I am very focused on how do I support this community in the words of Beyonce, getting everything they came for. How do I support growth? How do I support wealth generation and economic development? And that's also one of the really, I think, special reasons about why I came back. So I left in 2006 to go to college in Atlanta. Shout out to CAU. And I was gone until 2022. I didn't live here anytime in between that. And when, COVID hit, a really great opportunity to move back home bubbled up where I could still do this work in Silicon Valley and with this fund while also doing it from home and contributing
Hmm.
here
Hmm.
because a lot of brain drain happens across the South, whether it's Mississippi or Alabama or Louisiana. How can I come back and be a contributing member because I have a home here and I know that there's so much potential in the things that it could be. So a special shout out also to our mayor, the first Black mayor of our city, Stephen Reed. is also a product of someone coming back and really wanting to make a difference. And so I appreciate his support and have loved tapping in with him on ways to make our city better and help it grow.
I want to touch on this thread. You just mentioned a line there, being able to make a difference. And I want to touch on that thread because like you started off in like nonprofit work and you still sit on some boards today, I believe, in the nonprofit world. And at the risk of putting this the wrong way, so I'm going to preface this for the audience. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. And so sometimes we pursue nonprofits when we should, as a people, be building companies. And like where I'm from, like we have more nonprofits per capita. That's just a fact. We have more nonprofits per capita than anywhere else in the country. And too often, like we as just a people, in my view, pursue nonprofit work when we could go build a company and put resources back in the community. Is that okay to say it that way?
I think that's factual.
Okay.
Yes.
So with that, now that you're making a difference, like I think about doing well while doing well. And so with that said, like what are the...
And Morgan talks about that a lot too.
Yes. And she's one of the people I heard her talk about it. It's like, what are some of the mindset shifts for the people who should be pursuing business? What are some of the mindset shifts that need to happen in order to be successful there? Like, what do you say to all the things I just put in that gumbo right there?
Yeah, that's really important because a lot of times when we think about helping people or supporting the community, we automatically think of nonprofits because that's who we see out active doing the work, right? If you're doing a direct service nonprofit where you're in schools, et cetera, we grow up and we see those things. And so it's very easy to think that that's the only way. Like with most things in life, as you continue to go through, you find out new versions of a story and you start a big company and you can give to nonprofits or you can do that sort of thing. Or you can be sure that you're, running a sustainable company that's not, damaging the water in your city. Or, there's all these things that you can do that are contributing to bettering where you live. I do want to say that, nonprofits are companies. They're essentially the same. It's just that profit margin doesn't come back into the business. In terms of a mindset shift, I think it's just about thinking about early, what are the many ways that I could do this? Oftentimes it's like like an association game. It's like, I want to give back. I have to do nonprofits. It's about maybe taking a pause and thinking about what are the structures and what are the different ways and what are the things that my community actually needs? Because it may not actually be a specific, new nonprofit. The other thing that's very important about that conversation is, and this is what we work on a lot with our group. And when I worked with athletes early on and their kind of philanthropy and that work, everybody doesn't have to start a nonprofit. You can just support one.
That's right.
A lot of really great nonprofits already exist. And what people don't realize is when they start one, either you have to fund it yourself or you got to go out and raise money. And that tends to be the most difficult part because the capital to sustain a nonprofit and do the work, you're constantly fundraising. And so I often encourage people, you don't have to not do nonprofit work, but how do you exponentiate your impact by doing it in a meaningful way, doing it together? And so that's usually what I try to encourage.
Yeah, I want to, because you like when you say it's a lot of work going to raise money for these nonprofits. I think what I hear when people go to start a nonprofit is they believe it's easier to pull on the heartstrings and get you to write a check to support this cause than it is to sell a product to a customer,
which is debatable, right? I'm sure it's one side is easier to pull on the heartstrings because some people are great storytellers, or some people, when you have personal experience in a thing, because what you often find, people want to start nonprofits that are focused on things that they know about and they have experience in. If you experienced homelessness or you experienced a certain disease, telling that story comes very naturally to you, which I think sometimes can be a little bit more difficult in starting your own company. But I would argue they're both probably equally difficult. It depends on what your strengths are as a person and as a storyteller. But I really encourage people, again, it's okay to start a nonprofit if that essentially is the best way to actually do what you want to do. And that may not always be the case. And as we work, in CLF, our second mission is how do we get more young African Americans into the technology industry? We think a lot of companies could benefit from having some of these really great, talented folks in them. And we do that work through a donation program. So 100% of our management fee, all of our carry, so every dollar of profit that CLF makes goes back to organizations that are specifically focused on that mission. And we tried early on to build out our own program, and we found that that's not our zone of genius.
Yeah.
There are people who've been working to get more young African Americans in tech for years and are doing it successfully, while we're over here trying to string something together. And we would be better off, and the students and the people who we want to serve would be better off if we put that capital into those nonprofits. And so it really just is about how to have the impact in the way that you want it.
I remember listening to, I think it was Metro Boomin, the producer, talking about how difficult it was to get other rappers and artists who come from where they come from to think about investing in a certain way, because they want to see the return right now. Quick. Yeah. Yeah. And so you work with...
You want to see the return quick, and then also don't want to take the risk.
Yeah. Yeah. So speak on that. So, because you work with athletes, musicians, et cetera, you help them find deals, source deals, get into deals. How is it mindset, things that you have to work with them on to figure out, okay, this is a different type of investing where you're not going to see it. You may not ever see it, but you may not see it for years.
Yeah. So I would say a huge percentage of my job is education. A lot of athletes and entertainers get really lucky when they have a great team around them that say, yes, you need to do your public market investing in your stocks, but also let me show you this thing, and are really teaching them kind of the breadth of everything that they can be doing financially. But most of my job is teaching people about investing in technology, specifically at the early stage. And what you brought up is actually one of the most common, important things that I have to hammer in from the beginning, is that venture investing is a long-term game. We tell people 8 to 10 years, your money is locked up. It's not a very liquid asset where you can come back and get it in a couple of years. I tell people when they're thinking about investing in the fund, I say, if you're going to be looking for this money in 2 years, don't give it to me. Don't give me your money if you're going to need it in 2 to 3 years, because the likelihood is that you're not going to be able to get it. Because when you think about the biggest companies, when they go public, there's usually a 10-year period between when they get 10 years plus from when they get their first investment to when they actually have exit, meaning a liquidity event, a IPO, which is an initial public offering, or called going public, or M&A activity, meaning they get acquired or bought by a company. 10 years till that money starts coming back to the investors. And so that's the biggest thing is, venture is very much a long-term game, and venture is also risky. So depending on what your risk profile is as an investor, should determine where you want to start investing. Maybe you want to be a little bit safer and you want to put your money into stocks or into, some of the more lesser yielding opportunities. Venture, it is high risk, high reward. So you're investing your money into companies that may not be operationally proven yet. A lot of times investing in companies that have no product. You don't know if people are going to like it, people are going to hate it, but maybe you really believe in the team, et cetera. And so teaching them about the holding period, teaching them about the level of risk, meaning most of your companies, most that you invest in will fail, in the early stage, but you're hopeful that those 2 or 3 or 5 that you invest in out of the 50 will really knock it out of the park. That is the goal. And then we also tell people third, the lingo. Once you learn the lingo of venture and of tech and of investing, you're really 90% of the way there. You can start making some really thoughtful decisions around where you want to put your money once you know how all of these things work together.
You mentioned something earlier about how the people who made the money on Facebooks and et cetera, were either super duper early investors or early employees. And those were deals our people in our community weren't getting in on those deals.
Yep.
And
now they are with CLF.
Yes. And this is the question, because I think about, I'm going to give you the question and I'm going to give you the back of why I'm asking this question.
Okay.
How do you evaluate a cultural leader to, you know, have that opportunity? Who are the athletes, the entertainers, executives? And here's why I ask is because, you know, there's a difference between like what you're doing in like a Reg CF, like, you know, a crowdfunding campaign to where we can get on in on those deals. But you're not necessarily, and you can clarify this, like there's not, everybody can't go and put money in, you know, CLF.
Yep.
But you're picking, you know, you guys are finding strategic partners that make sense for this fund. How does this make a difference over time to where there's more of us that are able to get involved?
Yep. So that's a really good question, because when it comes to investing in venture, there's a couple of things that make somebody a really great candidate. One, kind of a non-negotiable, is you have to have the capital to invest. And that requires either, you know, obviously a certain level of success or a certain level of experience over time that you're able to invest in venture. So there's different requirements that you have to hit legally through government to invest in like a venture fund, et cetera. The second thing is how useful and helpful and supportive can you be of a tech company like this? Because that's what's going to get you access. You have to have the capital. That's a non-negotiable. And then you have to get the access to the companies to be able to put that capital. And usually access comes from either having some expertise, right? Somebody's building an auto company and you used to be
a NASCAR driver
CEO at GM. You know
right,
what I mean?
Yeah.
What are the ways that you're aligned with the company that are also going to get you into the door? So that can be, you know, on an entertainment side, that you have a really great audience and people really, maybe you're a big time gamer and we have a bunch of games companies, right? There's a lot of alignment there. A lot of our athletes are gamers, and we have 2 games funds at the firm. And so there's a lot of interesting alignment there. So I would say the capital, the access. The other thing that was important, I think there was another part of your question.
I was talking about like over time, how do more of us find opportunities to be getting in on the next Facebooks, the next Instacarts?
Yep, absolutely. The other thing that's really exciting, and I think a way that a lot of people are going to become investors, is there have been so many, I'm sure you've noticed over the past probably 4 or 5 years, so many new venture firms popping up. Obviously, you have big ones like Andreessen Horowitz, right? We've got $44 billion under management, but most funds are smaller funds that have a specific focus. Maybe they only do pre-seed companies. Maybe they only do fintech companies. And really building relationships with the funds where you have a level of expertise, where you can get that access, I think is going to be critical. It really is about doing the research, because I can't tell you how many people waste time going to funds that maybe they've just heard the name, but they have no idea what they do. There are hundreds of venture firms out there that are really looking for folks for their portcos to join advisory boards, which also can get you a little bit of equity. So that's a way to also earn actual boards of directors. So say you're an executive in a specific area, you can come on as like a pre-IPO board director. There's, I think, a lot of interesting opportunities. It's just about getting in with really great founders and then also figuring out which venture firms might align with your investment interests. It's all about, I think, the capital and then the access. And a lot of the access comes through the people that you know and the founders that are doing that work.
Can you talk about an example?
Because Will, now me and you know each other. And if Will, you say to me like, oh, Megan, I've got the capital. Yeah. I've got a big podcast. I've got a huge platform. I love to invest in tech. Yeah. Now I can keep you in mind for opportunities that come up.
Okay. We might have to talk.
So there you go.
Can you talk about can you share an example of like a strategic partnership between like a cultural leader and a technology company startup that has worked so far exceptionally well?
2 that I would probably share. Patrick Mahomes is actually one of our LPs, and it feels really timely because, you know, they were just in the Super Bowl, but he plays golf and was really looking for a way to support his nonprofit work and his philanthropy through he has a golf tournament. Yeah. We also have this other portfolio company called Whatnot. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's like an online kind of live shopping company. And they had mentioned, they're like, we really want to do more kind of in our impact work on our nonprofit side. We're looking for the right opportunity. And we're like, you know, kind of antennas going off, because we also knew what Patrick was interested in doing. And so we put those two together. They had a number of conversations that over time evolved into a live streaming event, obviously, you know, through the fund, their investors, but he had a live streamed his charity golf tournament, and he had a hole-in-one challenge. And it was in order to raise money for his nonprofit. He had, I think it was like 20 or 25 chances to get a hole-in-one to win for his nonprofit. And one, it's really great for the company, because who doesn't want to tune in and watch Patrick Mahomes try to hit 25 hole-in-ones and obviously, you know, missing every single one. That's really exciting for the company and for that team to have him involved, but also really great for Patrick because he wants to bring more attention to his nonprofit. It's called 15 and Mahomies, and he wants to raise more money for them. And so it's about matching the right person with the right company on the right initiative. And they ended up raising, I want to say maybe, I don't remember the exact number. Don't quote me. I'll get it for you maybe after this. But for his nonprofit, and it was really a win-win for both of them.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's a learning out there. I don't want to call it a fact because depending on where you go, you find different numbers. But they say the black dollar circulates in our community for about 6 hours, while you can go all the way to, you know, white communities, and then the Jewish communities, it's like 30 something days, you know.
What is the calculation?
That's what I'm saying.
What are they using?
That's what I'm saying.
To get to these numbers.
Don't come for me. Don't come for me. I've just already set the stage for this.
And funny story, this is actually, remember I told you, so background, Will and I were talking about some time I lived in Toledo before.
Yeah.
I was actually studying sociology, so it's a social science, and I focused on like metrics and outcomes and like data. So all of my work was statistics.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody gives me numbers like that, I'm like, source me.
And again, I told you, there's a lot of different ones out there. I did not say that this was a fact. I will not say it's a fact. But if you go, people say this is like Greenwood, Banks, etc.
I'm giving you a hard time.
We good. Because I did a good preface. Oh, no, I feel like
you did.
I think okay.
It was appropriate. Yes.
I appreciate that. So the conversation around like the power of the black dollar and venture, like how can we be more intentional about circulating wealth? No matter if it's 6 hours, 6 days, whatever it is, how can we be more intentional? Because, and the reason I ask that is because we are, I would say, decently good at economic protests. And then there's another conversation to be had on, okay, like, what are we going to do instead? And so are we going to be buying from Actively Black? Are we going to be buying from, you know, these other black owned companies? Like, it's one thing to take the money away and take it out of the system, but where are we going to put it?
Yeah. Ooh.
So how can we be more intentional is the question.
I think there's probably a lot of opinions about how we could be more intentional. But you know how, I don't mean to make probably a bad joke. You know how when somebody's dating somebody and they say, oh, they never call me, and they say, well, they make time for what they want.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
Similar to our dollars. It's probably the most random example, but that's the best one I can think of. Is if people want to buy black, they can. There's a way to do it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work. Right. To find, you know, it's easy to find maybe a black owned fashion brand. Maybe it's hard to find black owned bathroom cleaner. Who knows? Yeah. But if you want to make that transition, you can. And one of the, probably in terms of like actually investing, if somebody wants to make a percentage of their portfolio where they focus on that, it doesn't mean you have to only do that. But if you say, okay, I've got $100 to invest, I'm going to put 50 in the public market and 50 over here, and I'm going to do 8% in venture, because venture should really only be a single-digit percentage of your total portfolio. Your whole portfolio should not be venture. And then you say, of that 8%, I'm going to put 4% of that into black companies. That's a decision that someone could make. And so I think, you know, I would venture to say, for those who are committed to it, are doing it.
Yeah,
it's just a decision like any other decision.
I love to hear that. That's encouraging, actually. So how do you think AI, blockchain, other emergency...
Real quick. I just also want to add, there are actually quite a few, even if you just Google, Use ChatGPT. Say, GPT, give me Black-owned X, Y, and Z companies, right? It might hallucinate a little bit, but like it'll probably get you some good answers. There's actually a couple of websites also that list out different types of Black businesses that you can support as purchasing from or investing in. We're actually doing, we just recently launched a partnership. I don't know if you're familiar with the 15% pledge.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So 15% pledge founded by,
I want to say we had them on here. We may have had them on the podcast before.
oh, perfect. My girl, Aurora James. We just launched this thing called the AI Illumination Grant. And the goal is, and this actually might get into your next question, so I'm sorry, because I already heard you say AI and crypto.
Yeah.
But the 15% pledge supports Black businesses, both in, beauty, fashion, CPG, perfume, jewelry, who are Black owned, getting shelf space in large retailers. They got several hundred brands, if not thousands of brands on their website that people can search and go support. We created a grant together, us, the Cultural Leadership Fund, the 15% Pledge, and Kevin Hart's Heartbeat Ventures, called the AI Illumination Grant. And it is specifically focused on ensuring that the Black founders that are a part of the 15% Pledge program don't get left behind in the usage of AI, because everybody's talking about it, but it's not really clear where you start, and it's not really clear how to supercharge your business using AI. And so we're doing a $35,000 grant. We're hosting 2 webinars, one webinar on using AI for storytelling, the second webinar on using AI for product design, for all of the founders, hundreds of founders that are part of that program. And actually, the first session is on March 13th, I believe. And people are doing the work to highlight Black brands, and now it's just a matter of supporting them and being sure they're set up for success.
Yeah, it wasn't the podcast. We had Aurora at AFROTECH in 2022. That's what it was. I knew I would.
Makes sense.
Yep, there you go.
Aurora's about it. She's about
it. Yeah. So emerging technologies. How can we, as Black people interested in creating generational wealth, participate? What should we be focused on with AI, blockchain, other emerging technologies? Like, where should our attention be on learning and getting involved?
The first thing is, don't be scared.
Yeah.
Don't be scared, because that's the number one thing I hear is the fear. Now, I want people to have healthy skepticism, because we can't just let people tell us any old thing. Have a healthy amount of skepticism, but be open to learning and taking a couple of risks, because we saw it very early on in the crypto space. It was a learning curve for a lot of people, not just Black people, but how do I engage with the technology? How do I begin to use it? How do I just get started? You have to just get started, because a lot of it is a rabbit hole. You know what I mean? You learn one thing, you learn the next thing, and then you see this other link. And so people leaning in versus letting the fear consume them. And I would say, we saw a huge change over the last year, even in the AI conversation, because even last spring, you bring up AI, people are so hesitant. They're like, oh, nope. But the tech is coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. You can either join the movement and figure out how to make it work for you, or you're gonna get run over. And I want to figure out, how do we encourage people to utilize the technology to their benefit, which is part of the reason why we're doing this whole grant program and these webinars, is because we want people to learn how to supercharge themselves, their productivity, their output, etc. So that's one of the things we should be doing, is quelling our fears as best we can with a healthy dose of skepticism, and then learning. AI is changing and improving every day. You got to stay on top of it. I think that's the most important thing. One of the big questions we always get is, where do I start? Because that's the hard part, because there's a lot out there. So we kind of came up with this acronym called Gucci P. Shout out to Davaris over at Maraxa, who we were on a panel together, and I came up with these 6 companies that people to start, their journey. And I'm talking to the audience, and I'm like, yeah, I was trying to come up with like a, cute little acronym to make it easy for y'all. And I was like, but I don't have I was thinking about it for a week, Will.
Yeah.
A week trying to come up with something good. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna give you all the letters. I was like, CIUCG, whatever. And Davaris goes, Gucci P? And I was like, Gucci P. There you go. Nice and easy. So usually I think that these 6 are a good place to start. So it's Gamma, it's UDO, it's Captions, it's Chat GPT, which is a good one.
Yeah.
It's Ideogram. Elizabeth, you remember my P? My P is escaping me. Do you remember the P? I don't remember.
You can pop in, Elizabeth, if you
come here, E, and then I'll just say it all again. I'll just say it all again.
Hang on
Why
one
is
sec.
my P escaping me, E?
I don't know, but now why is it escaping me? I know this.
I've said this 9 million times. I don't know. We can just cut this part out. But
I want to keep this in. I love this.
I know.
Hang on. Oops. I pulled up.
I feel like it's I don't remember. It'll come to me.
It'll come to you.
And I'll just say it all again.
Photo room. The image editor on your phone.
Thank you. Oh, that was about to make me crazy. I was getting hot. Like, make it.
I love it.
Even the 37, my age is hitting me.
I want to keep that in. We'll keep that in.
Should I back up and start that over?
Yeah, you get an acronym again if you want.
Okay, wonderful. So the 6 companies are Gucci P. So it's Gamma, it's UDO, Captions, Chat GPT, Ideogram, and Photo Room. So that's a great 6 to kind of just start tinkering with, so you can get familiar with the tech and figure out the ways that it can work for you. And then you'll be on a journey from there.
I love it. I want you to talk a bit. You mentioned the programs you guys are doing to help people. You want to talk a little bit about that while we got like 2 minutes left?
Yeah, totally. So really, when you think about the work of CLF, it's twofold. So the first mission of CLF is connecting the world's greatest cultural leaders to the best new technology companies. And for us, that includes athletes, entertainers, musicians, and C-level executives who may not be in tech, but they're excited about tech. They're interested in innovation. They want to play a role on the things that are being built across this industry. And we get to be their on-ramp into doing that. And the interesting piece is that kind of ties back to what you mentioned earlier about how do we get more of us involved in tech as investors, et cetera, because like we're not all athletes and we're not all entertainers. Yeah. We have more executives as CLF LPs than anything. Our executive network is a huge pillar of CLF and the capital that we deploy. And so if you're an exec, you could be a marketing executive, you could be kind of in any space that is valuable to startups. And that's a huge part of our LP base. So I want to be sure folks know you don't have to be an entertainer. You don't have to be an athlete to invest. And then the second mission of CLF is how do we get more young African Americans in tech? So we support over 30 organizations through CLF who are doing the work of getting more young African Americans in tech. We kind of do it in 3 stages. So the first group that we fund are called our ecosystem partners. So these are partners who are nationwide, who have proven over time that they're putting talent into that tech pipeline. And we fund them what we say is the life of the fund, meaning 8 to 10 years, we are committing to funding them every year. That's really unheard of in the nonprofit space. If you get a 3-year grant, you're like, yes. If you get a 5-year grant, you're like, even better. Yeah. But an 8 to 10-year grant is not normal. And we're doing that very intentionally because we want to have a long-term relationship and we want people to feel like, again, they don't constantly have to chase dollars as tough as it can be to run a nonprofit. The second group we have is our community builders. And this became really important because we realized as technology changes, AI, crypto, there's not going to be organizations that have been around for 20 years that are helping people learn crypto. Crypto ain't even been around for 20 years. So how do we support organizations that are doing something new and ensuring that Black people aren't getting left behind? So these are more so a one-time grant to help you kind of get that vision over the line, to start proving out that, you know, you're helping to get more people in crypto, or you're helping to teach folks how to design through AI. And so we wanted to fund new and innovative programs. And then the third thing we do is kind of our big project, big swing initiatives. We, during the kind of NFT craze back in maybe 2021, 2022, one of the things we noticed is that there weren't a lot of projects being done on Black art. They were all artists who did not look like us. And I said, the whole team actually said, now we know there are Black artists creating things. How do we ensure that they're a part of this kind of new movement in the Web3 space? So we created the Black Digital Art Collective. We committed about $400,000 to that program over 3 years in order to buy Black digital art, help hype it up, help it grow, help the artists get some notoriety, to then sell those pieces at a, once they get marked up, and then use that money to buy more Black art.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of big swing things that we try to do to support our community, both in business and on the nonprofit side. So that second mission is really important to us. And we kind of make a joke that that's not a joke, honestly. That's the real reason why we come to work every day.
I love it. People want to learn more about what you're doing. Where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
Yes, so they can find us on Instagram. Our Instagram is at A16ZCLF. I'm on Instagram at Megan H. Alexander. No extra H and no extra A in Megan. So it's just MEGAN H. Alexander. Also online, a16z.com/CLF. It's really important work. Please go check it out. And we hope to keep kind of evangelizing the story of investing in tech to our community.